Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we're going to be having our second winter 2022-23 look ahead. We're going to go through some various charts, longer range forecasts, and have a look at what they're going to be showing over the next few months. Now, in last look ahead we did allude to the fact that it was looking possible we could see a cold start to the winter before turning milder, wet and windier towards the second half of the winter. That is a signal we are seeing continuing today when we have a look at different data. We're going to have a look at various ECMWF charts over the next month to 6 weeks, so really only extending into the end of November, but when it comes to early winter, November still can be, or still can produce wintry weather as we saw in 2010. So it is possible, and even last year we actually saw some wintriness right towards the end of November, the last sort of 5 days or so. So it is possible. So we'll be having a look at these charts as they not only could produce some wintriness into November, but could show what the pattern is over the next month or two as we head into December. We'll also have a look at the QBO charts, which shows winds high up in the atmosphere. We'll have a look at the ENSO region, so sea surface temperatures, and then we'll also finish by having a look at the CFS daily run, where we have a look at what's going to be happening over the next few months. It's just a bit of fun, but it could highlight any patterns that we are seeing, and of course we'll compare the different CFS runs over the look aheads and see whether we're seeing any sort of persistent signals for blocking and things like that. So do remember, if you enjoy my videos, make sure you like and subscribe, and remember to follow me on Twitter as well. The link's in the description. Now, before I start, I just want to apologise. I do have a little bit of a cold at the moment, so I'm going to be sounding a little bit bunged up, and I apologise for my voice in this video. Hopefully it does clear over the next couple of days, and I'm a little bit clearer. So yeah, sorry I do sound a little bit bunged up, and I should be hopefully getting better over the next few days. So if we do start in this look ahead, we'll have a look at the ECMWF charts. Now, last week we had a look at the month ahead charts, so anomaly charts for the month ahead in terms of pressure. But today we're just going to have a look at the weekly mean anomalies, but over the next sort of 6 weeks or next month or so. Now this is going to show the end of October all the way through quite a bit of November. Have a look at the mean, 500 HPA height weekly anomalies. So again, these are, as it says in the name, weekly anomalies. So this is an anomaly we're going to be seeing every day. But if you average the 500 HPA level throughout the week, this is what is going to be happening. So oranges and reds here showing higher pressure, and blues showing lower pressure. Now this is a run from Thursday, so it is a few days old, but this sort of chart's only run twice a week, on a Monday and a Thursday. So this is the latest we've got, and you can see the valid time initially for this chart is from the 17th of October until the 24th, so it's the next coming week, so tomorrow really. And you can see, this is what we've been seeing on our daily videos, look at the GFS and things like that. We've got low pressure out of the Atlantic, high pressure over to our north, a very weird pattern, but a southerly flow with low pressure running in off the Atlantic, giving us quite an unsettled but warm signal. So you can see how these charts do replicate what we are seeing in reality. It's not going to show what we're going to see every single day. It is the mean. So the next week or so is pretty much bang on. We are looking at our daily videos, but it's the longer term that we need to have a look at. Now, if we do run beyond this, you'll be able to see that the anomalies do become weaker, because as we head into the future, the signals do decrease. So we're not going to have as strong anomalies as we do for the first week. So this is getting into the sort of 10 to 14 day time frame plus here. And you can see for the 24th to the 31st, so right towards the end of October, towards Halloween, we have higher pressure out towards Greenland and northeast Canada, lower pressure towards Scandinavia. That would encourage a bit of a northerly wind. But we also have higher pressure out towards Mediterranean. That would be potentially trying to push in a southerly wind, and this could be sort of a scenario where we have a week of two halves, where we have some northerly winds, but we also have some southerly and southwesterly winds. So this is why these weekly charts are a little bit difficult to read sometimes, because they can have conflicting signals, and this perhaps is one of those where maybe the week starts with a south or westerly flow before veering more northerly with lower pressure towards Scandinavia and blocking up towards northeast Canada and Greenland. So this is potentially cold, but at the same time could have mixed signals in the week. If we move to the 31st to the 7th of November, 31st of October to the 7th of November, look at that. Huge high pressure signal, even higher anomalies than we've seen previously. So there is strong signals here from the ECMWF foreseeing major high pressure blocking towards the start of November. Now, it is something we have been seeing on the longer range for the sort of daily video models, but it's nothing we've seen too extensive. And you can see today, look at that high pressure over UK extending northwards. That's the important thing, it's extending northwards, and this most likely could produce colder weather. Nothing crazy cold, because of course we don't want any snow, things like that. Is a bit too early in the season. And of course, there is not a lot of low pressure around, so nothing to produce any precipitation. But this would be pretty chilly, but very dry. Probably an inversion under this, and of course we've moved around the high pressure in a clockwise direction. The winds move around in a clockwise direction. The air mass will be most likely coming in from the near continent. And what does that mean? It most likely will be a chilly continental flow. Nothing crazy cold, because the continent still isn't that cold. It's still got a bit of summer warmth on it, but the air mass is most likely originating from the Arctic, so it will be a chilly air mass, most likely temperatures average to below average, overnight frost within the day with some sunshine. It wouldn't be too bad. But if we move to the following week, the high pressure is still there, but it moves further northwards and westwards up to more towards Greenland and Iceland. Now what this does is it veers the wind more from a northeasterly to northerly wind with low pressure towards Scandinavia. That could be a lobe of polar vortex there, dropping out, so a lobe of quite cold air. Now, what that could do is really turn us well below average. Again, wouldn't expect any major snowfall or anything like that, no major cold, but could produce temperatures well below average, and could be really quite chilly with a northerly flow there. And then again, if we move towards the 21st of November, or from the 14th to the 21st, still got that higher pressure towards Iceland and Greenland, and interestingly seeing some blues down towards Spain and Portugal. This perhaps is where the jet stream is moving. We get a split in the jet. Some of it piles northwards towards Greenland, some of it treks southwards towards Northern Africa and the Mediterranean, with the storm track well to our south. Now, this again would promote a northerly or easterly flow blocking there, and yeah, it could be very, very interesting what's happening with that. And we are getting to the time frame here towards the second half of November where proper cold weather is possible, and we head right towards the end. Still a huge high pressure signal to our north, extends all the way through to Eastern Europe. So I don't know what that exactly shows. It could veer the winds more from an easterly and could show a very mixed signal here. And again, it could be a week of two halves, but towards the end of November, still major blocking in the North Atlantic and towards Iceland and Scandinavia, promoting northerly or easterly winds, or at least halting the westerlies for quite a period of time. So you can see here through most of November, it looks high pressure dominated, but high pressure positioned over the top of us and to our north, which would encourage a southerly or easterly wind, so cold air. And yeah, towards the second half of the month, you couldn't even rule out some proper cold weather as those cold air masses to our north properly establish themselves over the next few weeks or so, and then could head our way. Now, as I said, it's still November, so we're not into the proper wintry months, so it is not going to produce anything crazy unless we've got an exact sort of replica of 2010 or something extremely severe, which these are not showing at this stage, and of course it is in the longer term, so we can't say that for certain, but it is signals, and if these signals continue into December, we could then see something really quite severe. If this high pressure signal continued over the next week or two beyond this into the middle of December, that's when we could see something quite severe. So we've got to keep an eye on it. Again, I'm not expecting anything crazy, at least for the first few weeks in November. Maybe there's chances towards the second half of November, but that is right in the extended range and can change. But at least the next sort of 2 or 3 weeks, I'm not expecting anything crazy. High pressure looking likely to our north, perhaps colder than average, but drier than average as well. And yeah, it could be extremely interesting signal as we head into proper wintry period, i.e. the end of November into December, where the possibility of something cold becomes more and more likely. So yeah, we'll have very interesting seeing this today. Strong signal for high pressure blocking to our north, and this does replicate what we were saying in last week's video from the Met Office for a cold start to the winter, and what we'll be seeing in some data later in this video as well. Now, if we do go over to the precipitation mean anomalies, weekly mean anomalies, this again is going to replicate what we saw in the last charts as well, but in terms of precipitation. And this will indicate where storm tracks will be, so the jet stream, where precipitation will be, and again indicates where higher pressure, lower pressure is. We'll run through this a little bit faster because it does show very much the same thing as the last pressure charts, or 500 HPA charts, but it does show it in a different way. I.e. in precipitation. You can see at the moment a lot of precipitation pushing in from the southwest, and that's because we've got lower pressure there. If we move to next week, you can see again there is an increased precipitation over towards us and to our east, but a lot of drier weather towards the mid-Atlantic and Iceland, again promoting blocking. Lower pressure up towards Scandinavia, potentially pushing in a north or northeasterly wind. Again, towards the week after that, into the early November, higher pressure to our north. You can see drier than average anomalies over towards Iceland, over the top of us and to our north. More precipitation perhaps towards the mid-Atlantic heading into Spain, so that could be where low pressure systems are being pushed. And beyond that, again, higher pressure over the top of us, but again perhaps promoting an easterly or northeasterly flow with that high pressure extending in. Again, low pressure sitting out the Atlantic, perhaps low pressure getting trapped and stuck there. And beyond that, look at that, low pressure really running into the Mediterranean, high precipitation there, drier across Europe, again indicating perhaps a colder, drier air mass pushing in, and the storm track jet stream pushed to our south. And again, that continues right towards the end of the November with drier than average conditions over the top of us and to our north, and very wet conditions from that mid-Atlantic all the way through to the Mediterranean. Again, not huge anomalies, but the signal was definitely there, continuing that from the pressure charts, which show the jet stream pushing to our south, high pressure over the top of us, and perhaps cooler, drier conditions to prevail. Very interesting seeing that today. So if we do now run over to the QBO. Now, the QBO is the quasi-biennial oscillation, which is winds right up in the top of the atmosphere, around 10 HPA, and you can see here it's at Singapore. This sort of reading is taken, and it shows the flow at that point. It's very similar to when we have a look at the stratosphere, the polar vortex. Again, high winds high up in the atmosphere. And what these winds do is they can drive the weather towards the surface. They don't always cause us to be in specific weather patterns, but they do encourage weather patterns. So when we have an easterly QBO, it encourages the westerly flow to be disrupted. And that means we're more likely to see application of the jet stream, blocking and things like that. When we're in a westerly phase, westerly influence is encouraged more. And you can see we are in the westerly phase at the moment, but it is descending throughout the atmosphere towards the surface. We're still in an easterly phase, so that's interesting. Again, I'm no expert on the QBO. It is a very difficult thing to forecast, and of course it doesn't correlate, or it doesn't have exact correlations. We can sort of extrapolate what we've seen before, but we can never say for certain. And you can see it is in a westerly phase at the moment, and we saw easterly phase the last winter. And as I said, it's still easterly phase at the surface. That could still put an influence on us, but there's also a westerly phase higher up in the atmosphere. So could that mean that it does encourage westerly winds later in the winter, once that descends throughout the atmosphere? So that is something we need to keep an eye on. That could encourage a more westerly based second half of the winter, because of this descending throughout the atmosphere. Again, does not guarantee westerly flow, but it perhaps does encourage it, similar to the stratosphere. Whenever we have a very strong polar vortex, it doesn't always mean it's going to be a westerly stormy flow, but it encourages it. Now, if we do go over to have a look at the ENSO, this is the sea surface temperatures out in the Pacific, and this is something that a lot of people do talk about when it comes to our climate drivers. This is one of the biggest things is the ENSO region, the El Nino and La Niña patterns. Now, the El Nino is when we have above average sea surface temperatures towards the mid-Pacific, the equatorial Pacific, off the coast of South America, and La Niña is when we have colder than average conditions. Now, I'm hoping by looking at this chart, you can see we are clearly in a La Niña pattern. All these blues stretching across the equator from Peru and off the coast of South America, all the way through the mid-Atlantic, spreading all the way through towards Southeast Asia. Now, the La Niña here, you'd think, how does this affect our weather? But if you see the size of these below-average sea surface temperature anomalies, it does create a huge impact on precipitation amounts and wind flows in the Pacific Ocean, and given the size of the Pacific, it's of course going to have knock-on effects throughout the globe. Now, we'll have a look at the effects of La Niña in a minute, what it could do for our weather, but you can see here clearly that we are in a La Niña phase, and you can see it quite distinct because a lot of other areas are actually in warmer than average phase, and you can see that in the Atlantic. That could even perhaps encourage blocking. Higher sea surface temperatures can correlate to more higher pressure, and of course with above average sea surface temperatures around the UK, if we did see any cold air mass push in from the north or the east, it could encourage more convection and more wintry showers, things like that. So that is also something we do need to take into account, but of course we need to get that colder pattern in the first place, and these warmer than average sea surface temperatures could produce more precipitation if we did see that sort of pattern. You can see this well on a chart here for the ENSO region, the Southern Oscillation Index. You can see we're in a positive phase, which is a La Niña episode, and you can see we've been in that for the last year to 18 months. Quite a prolonged phase of La Niña here, and you'd expect it to end soon, but it just keeps on maintaining its strength. And La Niña kind of is when we above 0.5, so we are pretty much in La Niña and above for the last 18 months, as I said. And yeah, it is perhaps going to promote some cold weather as we head into winter. Now, if you head over to the Met Office website and have a look at a blog from a couple of years ago, this is from 2020, where we were going into a La Niña phase as well. That's probably the start of that La Niña phase that we just saw there. And this is a blog from the time, and again, it's how will La Niña affect our winter weather? It's almost pretty much 2 years ago, and this is, as I said, as we head into the La Niña phase. Now, down here you can see that Professor Adam Scaife has said here that La Niña has a profound effect on weather across the globe, with us even seeing impacts that extend across the UK. And of course, because we're so far away from the Pacific, it's touch and go whether the La Niña effects do impact us. Now, sometimes we see huge impacts from it and huge correlations. Other times we don't see any sort of effect. But it definitely does sort of fall in with the patterns we're seeing at the moment. And you can see in late autumn and early winter, it historically promotes higher pressure in the mid-Atlantic, which stops Atlantic weather systems from delivering mild air to the UK and therefore allowing colder conditions to intensify. And that is exactly what we saw in those ECMWF anomaly charts over the next month to 6 weeks, and what we saw in various videos last week, various charts last week, and what we saw from the latest Met Office blog for the early parts of winter as well. So definitely the Met Office are thinking a cold start to the winter, most likely because of at least one significant thing that's making that. It is the La Niña we have at the moment, and we're seeing that reflected in the actual pressure charts as well. So perhaps it is the La Niña having a big impact this winter, because as I said, could produce early winteriness through the end of autumn and early winter. However, I must say this, in late winter, La Niña can drive a shift in trajectory towards the poles, increasing storminess and heavy rainfall while bringing milder conditions. And again, that's what we saw in the Met Office as well. Cold start to the winter, mild end to the winter. So definitely, I think in the Met Office blog we saw last week and their predictions, La Niña has got a quite strong hold in there, and of course it is actually correlating what we're seeing in the raw precipitation charts. They've got no human impact in at all. These precipitation charts are generated by a computer model and have got no, they probably have no knowledge really that it's a La Niña. They just have a look at the raw data from the atmosphere and the seas, and they compute what is going to potentially happen. So we're seeing it from the Met Office blog, we're seeing it on data, and we're seeing it from the models as well. So definitely looks likely, or at least more likely than normal, to be seeing a colder start to the winter, perhaps a milder end to the winter. So we do finish this video by going over to Weather Central and having fun by having a look at the CFS charts over the next couple of months. We'll run probably into January or February sometime, and we'll just have a look at whether we are seeing blocking and some sort of northerly or easterly flows through November into December, so the early winter, and that would follow on well from what we saw on the Met Office blog from last week, what we're seeing with ECMWF charts, and what we're seeing from the ENSO region with the La Niña as well. Now you can see at the moment we do have a lot of high pressure around, but it's not really producing anything cold. As we head into around the week or two's time, you see we do have quite a bit of a westerly phase through start of November, but higher pressure is building in, so perhaps continuing what we saw in the ECMWF charts. Initially a bit of a southerly flow there, but high pressure maintains its strength over the top of us, and eventually towards the middle of the month, look at that, real cold northerly wind blocking towards Greenland, definitely similar to what we saw on the ECMWF charts. Again, we can't say exactly they're exactly seeing the same thing, but at least that is encouraging. They're both showing some sort of colder, blocked weather towards the middle of November. Beyond that, we maintain pretty blocked weather. It doesn't necessarily stay cold, but it stays pretty blocked, and we again see low pressure running in. But higher pressure blocking trying to establish itself here towards Svalbard and Scandinavia. And eventually low pressure does win out, but we continue to see these ridges of high pressure building to our north, and as we head towards the middle of December, you can see high pressure at the top of us, northerly and easterly winds building in. Look at that! Exceptional conditions, huge high pressure system towards northern Canada and Greenland. This wouldn't actually be going too cold for the UK because it's sort of one of those unfortunate situations where we're on the warm side of the block, and the lower pressure systems and the cold air plunging out of the Arctic, but in incredibly interesting conditions into December. Again, that definitely would follow from what we said on the ENSO, what we said from the Met Office blog, and from these ECMWF charts. Beyond that, we maintain a fairly blocked pattern. You can see there is blocking to our north. At times, you can see, of course, the big low pressure polar vortex does power up, so let me not state that it's going to be cold all the time. There definitely will be milder phases and stormier weather. There could be a lot of stormier weather, but there definitely looks like an above average chance of colder snaps in the early part of winter, and you can see all the way into the end of January. Look at that, sort of a very cold easterly wind, not a beat from the east, but very cold easterly snowy pattern there with blocking to our north, and it just continues all the way through the end of January before eventually turning milder into February. And similar to what we saw from the ECMWF month ahead look aheads we saw last week, the ENSO and Met Office blog, we do go, or at least try to go more westerly. There is still blocking here, but I'm definitely seeing more low pressure systems towards northern Canada running in off the Atlantic. Still blocking, trying to build in, but through March there and February, we didn't see as many northerly or very cold easterly. So high pressure does build in for a few days there for westerly winds win out. So yes, definitely quite a lot of blocking and cold weather on this CFS chart. Definitely more weighted towards November, December, and perhaps even into January as well, with February and March still showing some cold weather and some blocking, but not quite as cold. So yeah, very interesting once again seeing that today. These look-aheads definitely are suggesting we could see a colder start to the winter, perhaps with more higher pressure, drier weather and blocking, and perhaps a milder and wetter second half to the winter. But I must stress that always these week look-aheads, regardless of who does them, whether it's the Met Office or amateur people, it is always just having a look at the data and sort of weighing up. We cannot tell the future. Unfortunately, if we could, then I think we'd very much be able to prepare for what is going to be happening, whether it does go cold or mild or whatever happens. So yeah, we'll just have to see really. But at the moment, there are signs, as I said, for a cold start to the winter, perhaps even starting within the next sort of month or so. Again, as I said in last week's video, we don't especially want a cold winter this year. I know a lot of people watching this, including myself, love snow, love cold weather. But with the energy crisis this year, with the cost of living crisis, it's the last thing we kind of need for the country to be seeing colder weather where we've got a strain on electricity and gas supplies and things like that. So perhaps if we could have it our way, I'd bottle up any of the blocking potential, any of the colder weather potential, and just ship it all to next winter or the winter after, when hopefully these things are solved. But unfortunately, we cannot do that. We just have to look at the raw data, and if you do want mild weather this winter because of the energy crisis, looks encouraging perhaps through January, February and March, but at least in November, December, and maybe the first half of January, there looks likely to at least be an above average chance of colder, drier, more blocked weather. So we'll have to see, as I said, what happens over the next few weeks. Every week that goes on, we'll get more data and get closer to the time. We'll probably be having a look at the stratosphere and some of the polar vortex things within the next couple of weeks as well. So make sure you stay tuned for that. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you again for another video soon.